I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is a bonus episode of News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour for a bonus episode while I'm out on maternity leave. So today we are talking about the month of Marilyn, and I realize that this is going to air at a very different time from when I'm recording it, but I'm recording this in May of 2022, and as of this month, it's been a crazy month in terms of sort of a resurgence of Marilyn Monroe. So this is part of our series on misunderstood characters in history, but I feel like this episode really begs the question, is Marilyn Monroe a misunderstood character in history? After watching the documentary about her death, I would argue yes. I had no idea that she grew up an orphan. I had no idea how deeply troubled she was. You know, you hear things, but you think it's like typical actress, you know, sort of like, oh, fame is so hard kind of thing. It ran much deeper than that. I had no idea that she founded and owned her own production studio. Her death is shrouded with mystery. She was both a bubbly baby doll and yet this powerful force to be reckoned with at the same time. She's still to this day regarded both as America's sweetheart and as this scandalous sex symbol, which is kind of a contradiction in and of itself. So what exactly are we to make of such an enigma? Well, let's dive deeper and maybe we'll figure it out. So, in order to cover the topic of Marilyn having this moment today in 2022, I wanted to discuss some of the major moments lately where she has been the subject of fascination in the modern world. And then maybe we can use some of this modern perspective to make sense of her past. Let's dive in. So starting off, we're going to discuss the Warhol sale. So history regarding Marilyn's likeness was made just as of the past few weeks, as of the time I'm recording this. It'll be the past few months when you guys are hearing it. But she's gone, but she's still making headlines. Andy Warhol captured her face in a series of screen printings in 1962, the year that she died, and 1964 following her death. As of 2022, the Blue Sage Marilyn by Andy Warhol became the most expensive work of art by a US-based artist to be sold at auction. At Christie's in New York, this work featuring Marilyn's iconic face sold for a crisp $195 million. Now, of course, it's not just Marilyn's fame that caused this enormous price tag to be thrown down over a screen printing. Andy Warhol certainly brought something to the table there. But this is not the only time that we see Marilyn making history with another star here in 2022. Kim Kardashian at the Met Gala. Of course, we have to talk about Kim Kardashian wearing Marilyn's dress to the Met Gala. You see, this was just a few weeks later and just up Fifth Avenue from Christie's where the Warhol was sold. Kim Kardashian donned the exact dress that Marilyn Monroe had worn to sing to JFK almost 40 60 years prior at Madison Square Garden, also in New York City. But before we dive into this moment of delicious, iconic controversy, we need to discuss a little background info. So you guys may or may not already know these things, but just in case you don't, I think they are super important as to how we view this moment in fashion history. So the dress that Kim wore to the Met Gala was not just Marilyn Monroe's dress. It was the dress that she wore to sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President in. And we all remember this as potentially her most famous moment, aside from maybe the street vent blowing up her skirt. It was certainly a cheeky moment, potentially hinting at an affair with the president, but more likely just hinting that she, a sex symbol, had a casual, playful relationship with the president of the United States. Within 3 months of that moment, she was dead. So this dress symbolizes a lot of things. Obviously, an iconic moment in history, to be sure. A moment of coy public flirtation, a dark chapter in Marilyn's personal history, and potentially also a symbol of Marilyn's demise. Now, with all of that in mind, Kim, a sex symbol in her own right, ascending the Met steps in this piece of history, well, it pissed a lot of people off because this dress is a piece of history. It's completely irreplaceable. And because some link it to her untimely death, some saw it as anything from distasteful to downright offensive that anyone would be allowed to wear this dress. But let's face it, this is far from the first time that Kim Kardashian has had these words hurled at her. Disgusting, offensive, distasteful, etc. She started her career with a sex tape, after all. Let's keep that in mind. It is said that Kim slipped into a replica of the dress once inside the museum so as to enjoy the party without worry and not risk damaging the dress. But that did not make her wearing the dress up the stairs any less controversial or any less of a conversation starter on the topic of the mysterious, mythological Marilyn. So on top of both of these immense cultural moments celebrating Marilyn happening here in 2022 almost simultaneously, there are 2 films coming out about Marilyn also in 2022. One is already out on Netflix called The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe, and it is a true crime documentary diving into the mystery surrounding her death. It features unheard tapes of Marilyn herself and sheds some light on her infamous relationship with the Kennedy brothers. Again, it's a Netflix film and it's already available to watch. Highly recommend. I promise you will get sucked into this. I personally had always heard my whole life, the connection between her and the Kennedy brothers, but aside from there being a connection, I didn't know much about it. And it's very interesting. It was much more casual than you would imagine. But at the same time, sort of, roped into organized crime and things of that nature. So there are a lot of powerful players in this situation. So I definitely highly recommend watching that documentary that's already out. The second film coming out this year about Marilyn is actually a biopic. So basically a dramatized version of her real life. The film was actually supposed to come out back in 2020, but the pandemic obviously pushed it back. Rising star Ana de Armas of Knives Out will play Marilyn. And based on the images that I have seen, throw a blonde wig on her and a red lip, and she is an incredibly convincing Marilyn in her prime. This will surely only add to the Marilyn buzz that is happening right now as this modern budding starlet acts out her controversial and contradictory life. You see, Marilyn was always smiling and yet deeply depressed. She suffered from insomnia, legitimate imposter syndrome, several miscarriages despite a deep desire to have a child, drug and alcohol abuse, and much more. Like I mentioned, she grew up actually as an orphan in the foster care system, and yet she died a multi-millionaire who ran around with literal presidents. She wielded incredible power in Hollywood and at the box offices, but was regularly demeaned as a sex object as well. At least 2 of her marriages actually fell apart because of the sexualized public perception of her. She was always up on this kind of angelic pedestal. And when she inevitably did not live up to the fantasy of what her husbands believed that she was, or if she didn't keep her figure concealed for only him, or when she was human and struggled emotionally, she was knocked off that pedestal and the marriages fell apart. That contradiction of innocence and sexualization was only the beginning. Yes, she was seductive and sultry and yet sweet, but she was also beloved and yet rejected by her parents, her husbands, and even the public at times. She was childlike and yet powerful, mysterious and yet known by all. The woman who started her life as plain Jane Norma Jean Baker became the one and only Marilyn Monroe. And while many women struggle with a lot of these contradictions themselves at one point or another, they seem to truly define Marilyn. Her tapes proved that even though she knew she was a legitimate star, she never really accepted that reality in her own heart. We started this episode with the question, was Marilyn a misunderstood character in history? With her career starting in her teen years and her death at the age of 36, I would venture to guess that though iconic, successful, recognizable world over, powerful, glamorous, star-studded, and dominant, Marilyn Monroe was misunderstood, even to herself. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. For $7.99 a month, you can unlock tons of perks like breaking news text messages so that you're never out of the loop. Tons of bonus episodes are already up there ready for you to binge, and a discussion board full of networking opportunities and much more. Go to www.patreon.com/sugarfree media today to become a patron. This is the best way to support our show. Our patrons make News du Jour possible. But a couple other ways to support our podcast are rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, share on your social media, you have influence, tell your friends, family, and colleagues that you love News du Jour and why you listen. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram, just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok, and sugarfree_media on Twitter. We also have a weekend newsletter called Dreamers Digest that's full of dreamy content recommendations for your weekend and a life update from yours truly. Sign up today on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co. Our music is by Joey Lavoie and Nicholas Foster. Our cover art is by Hannah Pierce Photography. Our Sugar Free Media logo is by Catherine Jezik Designs. Any twinkling or little footsteps you might hear in the background are by my dog, Rhett. He's a rescue pup and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour. Broadcasting from Oklahoma.